Hi and welcome to Budgerty, a set of tools to budget for property purchases in the UK. Today I'll show you how to use the Stamp Duty Calculator by walking you through some examples. Stamp duty is a tax applied by the government when you buy a property in the UK, calculated as a percentage of the price paid for the property. This tax is not affected by how much of the price is financed by your mortgage. Stamp duty rates are applied in ascending price bands, and the rate for each band applied to any amount of your purchase price which crosses its threshold. More on that later when we go into a couple of examples. Price bands and rates vary by UK region and property purchase type. Budgerty maintains up-to-date bands and rates for all UK regions. That's England and Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland. Property purchase types include residential and non-residential, freehold and leasehold, first-time buyers, buyers replacing their main residence, and additional properties used for buy-to-let, for example, be they purchased by an individual or a company. Let's begin in the menu screen and we'll click on Stamp Duty Calculator. First of all, we'll be taken through a simple wizard in order for Budgerty to calculate with a base set of figures. For this example, we'll go to Scotland, enter a purchase price of £185,000. This will be a straightforward example of a residential purchase, and we'll look later on at a more complicated non-residential example. So let's take residential and click next. These are the different options for a residential purchase in Scotland. So first time buyer used as a main residence, first time buyer be used or rented out as a buy-to-let, replacing main residence. Purchase as an additional property, this could be a holiday home or a buy-to-let. Finally, a company purchase. Let's go with replacing main residence and finish. So here we see our results screen. Property price slider can be varied. We see the stamp duty cost here. In Scotland, this is referred to as land and buildings transaction tax, and the price bands in more detail below. Also then shown in the donut chart to the right. So at the moment, quite a low charge. If we start varying the slider, we see our stamp duty costs increasing, decreasing if we reduce the purchase price. And in the table here, so in this particular example of a residential purchase in Scotland, replacing our main residence, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 price bands. The first £145,000 of this purchase price is not taxed. We have a cost of £0. Then from £145,001 up to £250,000, 2%. In this example, resulting in £1,100. These last three price bands are not applicable. Our purchase price is below £250,000. Again, as we move the slider up and down, we can see those costs change in the table as well. If we enter a higher price, let's take 950,000, we now see a much higher stamp duty charge, and all of the price bands are populated with a charge. So our current purchase price exceeds the highest threshold, and anything above that amount, £750,001 upwards, is taxed at 12%. In this example then, £24,000. Again, if we move the slider up and down, we can see the costs change in each of the price bands, and the relative proportions change in the donut chart to the right. An interesting indicator, the top right here, is what percentage of the purchase price this stamp duty charge is equivalent to. So to be clear, it's a charge applied on top of the purchase price, a tax that needs to be paid to the government. But there we can see, as we increase our price, that this is also a far greater, or equivalent to a far greater percentage of our purchase price. Let's now look at a second example. If we click on Start Over, now we'll look at a lease purchase, and for this example we'll go to Wales. Let's take a purchase price of £850,000. This will be non-residential, so a property typically used in a commercial capacity. The same would apply to a mixed referring to mixed residential and non-residential, where non-residential treatment is usually applied for stamp duty calculations. Let's go with non-residential. Take the more complex example of a new lease. In Wales, we need to enter the lease term, first 5 years of rent, and then confirm the highest annual rent or highest known annual rent over the lease term. We'll go with 100 years. And in order to demonstrate what this field is used for, we'll keep our rents around the £10,000 mark. So let's go with 9,000, 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, 13,000. And we'll start by confirming a highest known annual rent over the term of £13,499. We'll come back to why I've entered that shortly. And let's finish. Same layout in the results screen. The slider to vary the purchase price, the stamp duty cost, the top left here, and the details in the table. Here we have two stamp duty sections. The first one here we saw earlier in our example of a residential purchase. So this is stamp duty applied to the purchase price of the property. In our example, £850,000. This additional tax on the rent is calculated by what is known as a net present value. This will be explained in more detail in a separate tutorial. Essentially though, this is a stamp duty upon the rent paid over the lease term. The result of that calculation, based on the rent payable over the lease term, is that we have an amount crossing that £225,000 threshold, resulting in a 1% charge on the amount that crosses that threshold, resulting in a cost of £1,252, which is then added to the stamp duty paid on the purchase price of the property. In the case of new leases, this purchase price is often referred to as the premium. Again, let's vary the slider. We can see stamp duty increases based on the change to the purchase price, or the premium as it's often known. In the case of Wales, this first price band on the purchase price of a new lease is set at 0% only when the maximum known annual rent remains below £13,500. If you recall, we entered £13,499. So as we can see here, this first band on the purchase price remains at 0, so there's no cost. Clicking on Start Over enables us to either completely enter a new set of data or simply update what we've just entered. Let's do that, non-residential. The figures from earlier are already populated. And let's change that highest known annual rent to £13,500. And finish. And here we see the percentage applied in the first band of the property purchase price now increased to 1%. So that highest known annual rental affects this band. The rest remains the same. And the screen functions as already explained. We have our slider. We see below the donut chart, which gives us an idea of the relative proportions of the different price bands. And on the top right, what this would equate to as a percentage of that purchase price. That's it for this tutorial. If you have any questions relating to this or any other of the tools in Budgerty, don't hesitate to reach out to us via social media or by emailing support@budgerty.com. Enjoy working with the Stamp Duty Calculator and see you in the next tutorial.